I am back for another episode of Princess to Queen. That was a podcast episode that women were so incredibly interested in and really wanted to learn even more about. So I wanted to bring this topic back and this time use some real examples of clients, whether current or past clients, and even of my own personal life to really help you see the difference between what it looks like to be in relationships with myself and with other people from princess energy versus the queen's energy. No, I want to state walking across that bridge from the princess to the queen is not a one-time walk. It is a journey that happens many, many times in a month, in a week, sometimes even in a day, given the situation and the circumstances. Because we were often raised by women and by mothers who were operating in their own princess energy, we didn't have a lot of role modeling for what it looked like to really step into queen leadership of self and in relationships. Obviously, when I say that, it is with so much love and respect for our mothers, our grandmothers, our aunts who really were doing the best they could given their circumstances. But that's why I named this podcast Midlife Muse Things Your Mother Never Told You, because these are things that no one ever told her. So that's why we're having these conversations. So we could really begin to architect our lives in ways that are more beautiful going forward. Because when I look back at my mother, my grandmothers, the stories of my great grandmothers, and of my aunts, with all due respect, I don't want any of the outcomes that any of them had. I don't want to have a life of enduring and constant suffering and not having my needs met. I am not delusional under any belief that life doesn't include suffering. I have had plenty, and I expect there will be plenty more. But I'm talking about a life where it feels like every day is just constant suffering. So I believe there is so much more possible for us. It's why I've done the work in my own life and why I continue to work with women across the world, because this actually changes so much for us. So I run an online community I call the Muses. And in that community, they have daily access to me. You are always welcome to join us. You can come in and join month to month for $125. If you join for 1 year, you get 2 months for free. So it is an incredible value. I am in there every single day answering questions. We have a topic of the month. We have a monthly Zoom call for 2 hours. You also get to keep the recording of that. Whether you're able to attend live or not, the recording is yours for the lifetime. And then I'm also doing Facebook Lives in there answering even more questions. So in those spaces, because those women there have made a commitment, I make commitments back, right? And so the more people commit to the world and the work of Midlife Muse, the more I give back in my personal sharing, because I really deeply believe that personal stories are the ways that we can really showcase the changes that were made. Who I was in princess energy, a change I made in my behavior to cross over and become the queen. And so I think those kinds of examples just make it so much more tangible for us. And also, as a leader, I will never be the kind of leader who believes that I have reached some epiphany, some place where I have it all figured out, and I will shout from the rooftops everything I've ever learned. I lead with so much authenticity. I lead with my feet firmly planted on the ground and the ground of reality that I am human. And every day I am getting up and I am doing all of this work that I teach women to do, because it is a lifestyle. It is a journey forevermore. So I am constantly in evolution of how can I show up even more vulnerably? How can I show up more raw, more authentically in my relationships that are so very important to me? But that also extends into the Muses community, where I use my personal life very much to showcase the things that I am teaching every month. So if you're interested in joining us over there, it's an incredible group of women from all over the world. And so many of those women are also coming to the Magnetic event in November. So it is just this beautiful sisterhood that is being built based on same values. And those values are growth mindset. Those values are wanting to see other women succeed. Those values are deciding to lay down the sword of feeling competitive with other women, the exhaustion and the fatigue of that patriarchal storyline. We were never meant to be in competition with one another. As a matter of fact, as we stay competitive with one another and we believe and feed into the storyline, there's only so much room for a woman to succeed or a woman to be in, I don't know, name whatever industry you're in or whatever kind of even relationship you're in. We believe that there's only so many pieces to go around, so many spots to go around. As we continue to contribute to that storyline in our own competitiveness, we feed that monster. And the greatest way to exit it is to realize it was a fabricated set of rules to keep women not only separate from one another, but very disempowered. Notice what happens when a group of women come together and support one another and celebrate one another and want to see each other go higher and shine brighter. When that kind of sisterhood starts to happen, you start to create this very powerful force of womanhood, a very powerful force in the world. A powerful force like that creates change. Now you have to think about it. If there's a system that is implemented like patriarchy that is built by men for the benefit of men, you have to imagine how it is so important to make sure that women are not feeling like they can be counting on one another. Because if women start to come together, the most unbelievable things begin to happen. There is a movie that is a perfect showcase of this. It is called Women Talking. I think that was the name of it. And it is about how women come together to decide to leave a community where they are being continually abused generation after generation. But these women weren't allowed to gather and talk, so they would have to hide and do it. And when they all came together and told their stories, they became more and more powerful. They came up with a plan and a solution, and they were able to save so many of themselves and their children. So we understand that when women come together, they become more powerful. They become more inspired. They feed off of each other's excitement and energy. And that is exactly what we do in the Muses community. So if you want to be in a community where women are uplifting one another, but where women are also holding space for each other's pain and heartbreak, the whole wide range of it, because that is the most incredible way to live. That full wide range of all human emotion, none of it expected to be checked at the door, then the Muses community would love to have you. Okay, so as we talk about Princess to Queen, which is really an overriding theme always in the work that I do because it infiltrates everything. The way we show up in our lives, in our businesses, in the bedroom, in our offices, with our parents, with our children, with money, with how we interact with ourselves in the mirror. Princess or queen shows up everywhere. So I often have women who are sharing with me their concerns about something that's going on with a partner. And language like this often comes up. We've been married for 18 years. How does he not know this? I've dropped so many hints. I don't understand how he can't get it. Or I've already mentioned this to him like 10 times within the last couple of years. I don't know why it's not happened. Or I just wish he knew. If he really, really loved me, he would just know. So I see women set themselves up with all kinds of expectations and, quite honestly, magical thinking. They're really expecting that if this person loves me so much, they're going to be able to read my mind. They're going to know exactly what it is that I want. And the reality of real love is that couldn't be further from the truth. Real love has a power and a vulnerability in how it communicates what it wants and what it needs, where it's hurting, where it wants things to heal and be different. So if you are operating in your relationship with magical thinking or this falsehood of beliefs that if they really loved me, they would know, first of all, give yourself a lot of compassion for believing that, because you may have seen that in television and cheap rom-coms or maybe some fairy tales growing up. The reality is a long-term partnership that has deep, deep roots is based on really raw and vulnerable, heart-led communication. We don't think that is sexy. We don't think that is hot. We don't think that is very appealing. And that is, if you stay in your princess energy and you want sexy, hot, and appealing, then you are going to get a very low level relationship. But if you want grounded, beautiful, honoring, respectful, safe partnership, then you learn to communicate through the language in your words and in your actions and in your body as a queen. And so if you are wanting your partner to plan a getaway and you've dropped all the hints in the world and he or she still hasn't planned that getaway, it may be because they are in a dynamic with you where they have tried to surprise you before and maybe they got criticized or it wasn't good enough, or they wanted to do one thing but they worried it wouldn't be the thing you really wanted to do. So they got so caught up in the rat race of judgment that they got paralyzed and did nothing. I see this happen very, very often, particularly with men. Men can often get very concerned if they are in a relationship that has often been super critical of what they have chosen or what they have done. So sometimes we see that dynamic playing out. Sometimes we see the dynamic playing out where there have been all kinds of different hints dropped in different times of the month. And I've had many women say, well, what I want at one time of the month is different depending on my cycle and another time of the month. And then we expect people to know what exactly that is. And this is why I am so in favor of not playing games, of being crystal clear in my communication. You know, I even had a woman recently say to me that she is newly divorced, dating, and that some people have suggested to her that she plays it cool, that if a guy responds after the first date, that she might not respond for a couple of days. Like, don't seem too desperate, don't seem too needy. And my belief is this: as soon as you enter any kind of game playing, don't ever expect anything more than a game. If you are entering communication as a child, expect a childlike relationship. If you want to communicate the truth and vulnerability and the power of how you're feeling, then be a woman and do exactly that. Because wouldn't you rather communicate as the queen, as the woman, when someone texts you? Respond in a way that feels authentic and true to you, than to waste months or possibly years of your life playing games to end up with the exact same result and realizing that this person is not a good match. I can never understand why in the dating world people are so terrified of being themselves. I understand you want to be chosen. I understand you want to feel worthy, but why would you want to be chosen by the wrong person? Why would you want to be chosen by someone where you had to play a game, where you had to perform, where you had to act? That becomes so wildly exhausting, and it's the most inauthentic version of you. So be very clear. If you enter into a relationship in the very beginning, if you are playing games, it will be built on a house of cards. One swift wind in the wrong direction, and it will all crumble because it's not built on a beautiful, truthful, stable, and steady foundation. If you don't communicate the truth from the beginning, you cannot expect to build anything beautiful and sustainable. So I want us to consider how even the beginnings of dating or communicating with someone, if you're doing it in an energy of princess, you have the opportunity to catch yourself and say, how would a queen respond in this moment? How would a woman who's so deeply grounded respond. She would respond from a place of truth inside of her body, not in something that a book told her or a friend told her or a dating site told her. Her raw, most true version of herself. I also have women tell me that in the bedroom, they are not feeling fulfilled, that they are feeling unmet in their desires. And then when I explore and ask them, have you told this to your partner? They say, well, I don't want to hurt his feelings or her feelings. Okay, well, then I'm curious how you would expect them to know you'd want something different. Well, I'm not sure. Okay, so if you want X, Y, or Z to happen, what about this? What about if you lead X, Y, or Z in the bedroom? If you want there to be something that changes, lead. And they say to me, well, I don't want to have to be the one. I'm embarrassed. Or what if he rejects it? Or what if it's not something that they want to go along with? Well, great. Then you have evidence of what they do or do not like. And then you can decide from there. I was just really introducing that because I thought it could be really fun for us. I see that's not something you're interested in, but maybe we can talk about what we can do to make it a little bit more exciting, a little bit more daring, a little bit more exploratory. I think it could be really interesting. Avoiding those conversations doesn't change or make the problem just magically go away. What it does is it gets you closer to solution. And sometimes the solution is realizing we're just not energetically matched with certain people anymore. And that's also okay. Not every relationship is meant to be walked out forever. Sometimes we take each other as far as we can, but being able to step into that queen's communication, the truth of what it is you really desire, you will then be able to gather data and evidence about how that person feels and whether or not you have something to work with or if you have a stalemate. Again, either one is information that you can make a decision based upon, whether you're going to be moving forward or moving in a different direction. So I see so many women stay in their princess energy, avoid the really hard conversations, and then years go by, sometimes decades go by, and nothing has changed. And I think, well, of course, nothing's changed. You haven't done anything different. If we want to create a change in our life, we can't keep doing the same thing we've always been doing. And more often than not, it's recoiling and getting into princess energy and thinking that somehow that's going to create a change for us. Again, that's our own form of magical thinking, quite honestly. I find that there is often this fear or concern that if I say what I really need, it won't be met. And sometimes that is very true. And that is really real. And then you get to decide and choose for yourself how that need will be met. It may be through someone else, something else, maybe through career, maybe through friendship, maybe through more self love, maybe through going a little bit more deeply inward. So anytime we are in that princess energy and we are wanting to craft a relationship that feels so powerful and so beautiful and like we are tracking together, we cannot continue to remain like baby princesses and think that we're going to have these incredible relationships. It's like a child, an 8-year-old little girl trying to have a relationship with a man, if in fact he's in his king. Of course, if you met in princess and prince energy, which often happens in relationships, then it will require both of you to start journeying together. And I'm going to say something here that's going to probably receive some pushback, and that's perfectly fine. I've been doing this for 25 years, and I know enough to, after being in the trenches this long and also being married almost 28 years myself, that women are the emotional leaders of our families. And so if you want there to be change in the relationship from an emotional standpoint, 9 times out of 10, it is going to require your feminine leadership. I've seen relationships on the brink of complete failure already in the divorce proceedings repair themselves. I have seen the most unbelievable situations get healed after 30 years of brokenness in marriage. I've also seen beautiful disillusion of marriage where they both respectfully decided that this was the end, but they got there through this beautiful queen and king energy. Rather than pointing fingers and blaming and screaming, It was an energy of we really have taken each other as far as we can. And it's been so beautiful. And we can both recognize that this is where our path ends and we turn and go in different directions. But I'm so grateful that we walked each other this far. So if we are wanting to be in a relationship that feels revolutionary and beautiful and safe and respectful and honoring, we need to act that way, to be that way. We cannot be 8, 9, 10-year-old girls running around in a woman's body, acting like princesses and scratching our heads and wondering why we're not getting these beautiful results. So it really is going to take that work for each and every one of you. And oftentimes what I see happen is women find it to be so difficult to break those patterns because understandably, they got into this performance of the princess, the seeking outside of themselves, like I talked about in one of the very beginning episodes of this podcast. The princess who seeks approval, validation, love, worth, everything outside of herself, never knowing how to build that within. When you have built a life on that or several decades on that, it's a really hard habit to break. But it's simply just that. It's just a habit. So just like any habit, you can replace it with a much healthier one. And it is going to require you to be in the regular practice of it, which is what we do in the Muses community, which is what we do in examples where women come in and ask exact examples like, okay, I'm stuck in this behavior. I know it's princess energy. How can I break that and get out of it and into queen's energy around this one particular thing? So we have tons of examples regularly about how we do that. And the more you practice it and the more you get support around that, and you have examples of other women doing that, the easier it is to create the new habit. But we can't create the new habit when we stay in the same circles of people who are not thinking in regards to this. If we have been surrounded with people who think in princess energy, we are surely going to have a very difficult time breaking out of that and getting into queen's energy in our own relationships if we don't have that support system around us. So it's really important. And that's why I built that community so that women could grow side by side and have the full support every single day of what it looks like to create a life in this type of energy. So I wanted to share a very personal story of something that happened to me this past February. I think it was February. It was the beginning of 2024. And I have been married. I will be married when this episode releases. I will be just about married 28 years, a couple days shy of 28 years. I've known my husband for 29 years. I would say we would both agree that half of those years have been happy and the other half have been quite a struggle. We've almost been divorced. We have had some very high highs and some profoundly dark lows and everything in between. And that's just the reality of a long-term relationship. I have grown and changed and evolved so much since the time that we met. And I was definitely in princess energy when we met. I was even in princess energy probably until about 17 years ago, in all truth. And sometimes that princess in me really wants to get activated. And she does get activated because the neural pathways from my early childhood, particularly surrounding events that were traumatic, those neural pathways are really, really deeply embedded. And the realities of the pain and trauma inside of my body, even though so much time has passed and I've done so much healing, there are remnants that can get activated if the circumstances align in just such a way. So this past February, it was just such a circumstance. I was not feeling well. As someone who really rarely gets sick, I was in a situation where I was really not feeling well, confined pretty much to my room and to my bed for about 48 hours, which is super rare and unusual. But I decided to come out of my room and get some different scenery, some change of venue, I suppose. So I was so weak and so dizzy that I was even concerned about going up and down the stairs alone. So I remember it was a weekend and I had said to my husband, I really think I want to try to come downstairs for a little bit. I can't keep sitting in this room, in this bed. I need to change scenery just for a bit. So we agreed. I got downstairs. It took quite some effort, like one slow step at a time, him holding on to me. And I didn't have much of an appetite. And I just asked him to get me a glass of water. I was so dizzy, I couldn't even read a book. I couldn't look at my phone. It really took everything for me just to kind of sit and be. It was just a complete and total stillness. Even moving my head left to right too quickly started to make me feel really ill. So I sat there and I got comfortable on the couch and I had a glass of water. And movement was really restricted at this point because of the dizziness. And so he had said to me at that point, "I'm I'm so happy you're down here and situated. Is there anything else you need? Because I need to go into my office for the next probably hour to get some work done. And I have this deadline tomorrow and I really have to get this completed." And I said, yeah, no problem. No problem at all. I will be right here. And I think an hour will be perfect. And then I'll be ready to go back upstairs. Okay, great. So an hour goes by. My water has long been gone and I'm thirsty again. And I'm actually even starting to feel a little bit of an appetite. But it's just approaching like an hour and 10 minutes, an hour and 15 minutes. So I'm trying to muster up patience, which patience has never been a real virtue. I'm trying to muster up some patience. And eventually, at an hour and 15 minutes, I text my husband to say, "I would like some more water. I actually think I feel like I could eat." And then I wanted to go back upstairs. And that message got sent by me and did not show delivered. Hmm, that's weird. I wonder why it's not delivered. And then I remembered often when my husband is deep in working on something, particularly a deadline, he has a tendency, same as I do. And currently, in this exact moment that I'm recording this, we put our phones on airplane mode. So there's absolutely no distraction. So we can be deeply focused. So I thought to myself, oh, he probably just put his phone on airplane mode because he's working on this deadline that he has. I'm sure any minute he'll be turning it off. And I'm sure even if he's not complete, he'll be turning it off, of course, to check on me and make sure that I'm okay. So some time passes, and some time passes, and some time continues to pass. And as each minute on the clock, which felt like was an hour, every minute that passed felt like a deeper cut, felt more intense. I was getting more and more angry. And underneath that anger was profound hurt. And underneath the hurt was the connection back to abandonment, was the feeling of when my dad walked out that door and didn't come back. So now I'm a grown woman, 51 years old. I know logically that is not what is happening. I know logically he's in the other room. Runs a large company. I know he has intense deadlines and he was under a ton of pressure at that time. I know all of those things logically in my brain, in my cerebral space, but my body felt like I was that 10-year-old girl again. My body felt like the little girl standing at the front door with her little bag packed, who stood there for hours refusing to unpack the bag because I believed he said he was coming. Certainly he hasn't forgotten me. He'll be here. So, with the same energy and hope of that little 10-year-old girl, every minute that passed, I kept thinking, of course he didn't forget about me. He knows how sick I am. He knows how fragile I am. He knows how weak I'm feeling. He knows I never even need him to take care of me because I'm so self sufficient and independent. This is something that happens probably once every 10 years, if that. So, certainly he's concerned about me. Certainly, any minute now, he's going to turn his phone on to see if I'm okay. And every minute that went by that did not prove that to be true, I got more angry. Underneath that was more hurt, and underneath that was more abandoned. Again, the cerebral brain kept trying to come in and say, that's not what's happening. That's not what's happening. You are not in that situation again. And then the indignant part of me thought, well, then screw him. I'm just going to make my way back upstairs. I don't need anybody. And then the old patterns got super activated that have been asleep for a very long time. The version of me that says, I don't need him. I've never needed anybody, as a matter of fact. I can't rely on anybody. The only person I can rely on is myself. So there I was, beginning to slowly stand and get my bearings. And then a few quick shuffles of my feet, stopping again because I was getting dizzy to balance myself. And the sadness now and the tears started to come because now I also feel super vulnerable because I am that sick and I truly need that much help. So now my sadness has touched into my vulnerability and the tears are flowing. And as I go a little bit further, I make my way closer to the steps and I sit down on the very first step because I'm feeling quite tired and I'm feeling quite dizzy at this point. I sit there and I'm feeling a flood of rage. It wasn't even anger. I'm feeling rage. I'm feeling the most catastrophic feelings in my body. I'm having thoughts that are incredibly intense. And I was also somewhat taken aback by it because I hadn't been in that place and those feelings for probably 20 years. And this just goes to show how powerful those young traumas are, because for an event like this to activate that kind of a feeling inside of me shows me the power of how our body remembers, like the book, The Body Keeps Score. How even though I hadn't felt something that primal in almost 20 years, it was activated. It was coming back alive. And I didn't like it. And oh my gosh, it reminded me of the times when I did live more like that and feel more like that. And it's so disempowering. And it's just so scary, quite honestly. It's so scary to feel that out of control in your own life, to feel that you depend or need or want someone that much. And that is often why we as women and men as well do the complete opposite, because it's almost a refusal to ever feel that vulnerable. So I'm sitting there on that step and I hear the door open from upstairs and I hear him start to come out of his office and make his way across the landing upstairs and coming down the steps. And it's a long staircase, so I can hear him coming down the steps. And inside of me was fury. Inside of me was like, I am going to tell him. I'm going to let him know. He is going to never hear the end of this. And then in a millisecond, as that was happening, I caught myself and I said to myself, Amanda, you get to do this differently. In this moment, it gets to be different. We don't have to revert back to the princess. We don't have to revert back to that young girl who was abandoned. Right now, in this moment, what would it look like if you were that powerfully vulnerable queen? What if you spoke the truest truth inside of your heart? And so as he came down the steps and I was crying, I looked at him. And before I could get anything out, he went immediately to concern. He thought maybe I was more sick or I'd fallen or something happened. He's like, oh my gosh, babe, are you okay? And he sat down next to me and I said, you forgot me. I felt like I was abandoned all over again. That stirred up everything from when I was 10 years old. How were you able to sit up there for that long and not check in on me? Were you not worried that something happened, that maybe I fell and hit my head and passed out? You weren't concerned? Did you not understand how weak I actually was? I really needed you. And I feel like I so rarely do. And when I really needed you, I felt like you weren't there. And I'm obviously crying, and then he starts crying. And in that moment, I felt like I built a bridge. I felt like I built a bridge from the truest, sometimes most hidden, most vulnerable parts of myself to him to say, I needed you and I felt like you forgot about me. It is a courageous act for a 51-year-old woman to sit on the bottom of a staircase and to say those words. To have been married almost 28 years and to still need to have conversations like this because we are human and we don't always get it right. Now, I could have very easily been in my princess energy and I could have just pouted and said I wanted to go back upstairs and given him the cold shoulder and not talk to him for hours or days. I could have screamed and blamed him and pointed the finger in all the ways that he failed me and how awful it was and how I'll never rely on him again. Or this is, just the blaming game or bringing up examples from previous times maybe that were something similar. But I decided to do something different because I am committed to my growth, because I am committed to before I leave this earth, I want to be fully surrendered. I want to know what it feels like to be in every space and every place of my life, fully surrendered. When I made the decision to rent out the Phoenix Convention Center and host Magnetic, that decision came from a place of full surrender, full vulnerability. In the same exact way, I am asking women to trust this experience, trust these 2 days in Phoenix, Arizona at Magnetic. I too am leaning into my full trust and my full surrender of the beauty of what we will be doing together, of dreaming that big and that grand and that beautifully for all of us. This is something that I have been desiring to do pre-COVID. I had no idea how or when it would happen. But when the stars align and you just have that feeling and it's so overwhelming and the desire can't even be put into words, that's what happened to me. I got on a plane and I flew to Phoenix with my team. We saw the event center and I said, this is it. This is it. These are the dates. I just know it. I feel it more than I can even find words or explain it. And when everybody else wants to get into the logistics of it, I said, no, I want to sign the contract. This is what we're doing. Now, if I'd stayed in my princess energy, she would have been overwhelmed. She would have been scared. She would have been like, well, I don't know how do we make this happen? And who else are we going to have to hire? And the queen in me said, we're doing it. And the queen in me every single day has hired the most epic teams, the most incredible event being produced, the most unbelievable 2 days beyond my wildest dreams, beyond everything and anything I could have imagined. Had I stayed in my princess energy, had I stayed in fear, had I stayed in scarcity, had I stayed in smallness. But when I exit out of that, the truth, the vulnerability, and the power of the queen is this is the way I want to serve. This is the work I want to do. I want to be in the rooms with women. I want to be in the rooms with large amounts of women having incredible transformation, the energetic of that many women together, the transference of that energy to every other woman in that room, and what she will be able to accomplish and decide upon for her life based in that kind of energy. Where else do women get those places and spaces? So in the same way that I talk about princess to queen energy in our businesses, in the bedroom, in our relationships, it all gets to look the same. It all gets to be that decision. I'm stepping into something bigger. I'm stepping into something more truthful. And every single time it's based on desire. If you're desiring something new in the bedroom, if you're desiring something new in the relationship or in the business, you move from a place of authentic power, vulnerable truth. That is not playing games. That is clear. It is beautiful. There is no guessing of what you mean when you speak. It's the most profound way to have relationships with people, whether it is people who work for you or in your relationships. any friendships with your parents, with your children. If I parented my children out of princess energy, it would be very frenetic. It would be very confusing. I would be changing my mind constantly. They wouldn't know what the expectations were. They would feel very unsafe. I see children who are parented by princesses, and they don't typically, those kids are often acting out quite a bit because it doesn't feel grounded and safe, because the mother doesn't feel grounded and safe in her body. So the children's behavior is always a reflection of how the parents are feeling in the home. So if they are feeling anxious and scattered, you see that trickle down to the children. If I'm feeling anxious and scattered, it will bleed into every aspect of my life, my business, my marriage, my health, my relationships with my body, my friendships, the relationship I have with my mother, with my brother, with my children, with all of my friends. So this work of Princess to Queen is so life-changing. And we are going to be spending so much more energy in that at the magnetic event. Really raw, really raw and real examples of what that gets to look like. And I will be taking your questions as well from the stage to really help you understand, okay, this is the behavior you've been trapped in for 10, 15 years in the princess energy, but you want to get there to the queen's energy. How do you walk that bridge? We will be doing that. So it's so crystal clear, and you will know exactly what you need to do to break out of that cycle. And when we do that in large groups, and when we do that together, and when we do that in event style, it lands in a very different way than simply hearing it on this podcast, reading it in a book somewhere. It lands differently when you are in a room with 1,000 other women who are claiming their steps from the princess into the queen. So whether you come and take a stop over in the Muses community, where I am working with women every single day, or you come to the magnetic event in Phoenix, Arizona for the live transference of this experience in real time and so much more, I look forward to meeting with you. I look forward to journeying with you, and I look profoundly forward to being wildly authentic and brave with you.